Hello friends, you're watching West Bloomfield 911. I'm Officer Rick, and on behalf of Chief Mike Patton and my brothers and sisters in the West Bloomfield Police Department, welcome to the show. And of course, I get to welcome my co-host, Dave McNeely. Dave, how are you?
Good. How you doing?
Good, good. How's things going?
I'm pretty good. I forgot the donuts, so you can scold me later.
David.
Scold me later.
I'm telling you, well, I'm not going to take the chain off. You're stuck to this table then. We'd also like to welcome a dear friend, one of our colleagues, our brothers in blue, Lieutenant Mark Stout.
Hi, Rick.
Administrative
Good to see
Lieutenant
you.
with the department.
Thank you.
Glad you're here.
Thanks.
Mark's
Glad
one of
to
my
be here.
favorites.
Thanks, David.
You don't have to suck up to him.
Yeah, he doesn't work for me. I
Yeah,
can't
right. Eventually, but not now. Folks, before we talk with Mark about a very important topic, gun responsibility and gun ownership, we would like to highlight one of our fellow colleagues. Please look on the screen and see the smiling face of Police Service Aide Jessica Meyer. Formerly known as cadets, they are now police service aides. And Jessica came to join us back in November of 2015, so she's a relative newbie here. And though she's never worked as a service aide or as a police officer anywhere else, she did get some police experience when she did an internship. Well, actually it wasn't police experience, but public safety experience when she did an internship with the Trenton Fire Department. And she still decided she wanted to cross over to the good side and work in law enforcement. When she was asked about her favorite food, she said fajitas. And you know, I like those too, Jessica. We could go out to lunch one day if you come on days. I'm not going to go to midnights with you. And her favorite book, and I like this, she said her favorite books are her own stories because Jessica is a writer. And I kind of like that. If you don't like your stuff, no one else is going to. So her own stories are her favorites. Her favorite movie, though, is Twister, a 1996 thriller starring Helen Hunt and Bill Paxton. And I enjoyed that too, Jessica. A lot of good special effects in that. And she loves all types of music, so her tastes are rather eclectic. When I asked her about her hobbies and interests, she said she loves to write short stories. And I have a lot of respect for that. I have a lot of respect for writers. It's hard to do something like that, at least I think it is. So she's a very talented young lady. She hasn't had anything published yet, so I hope you will do so very soon. And when you do, please let me know. I'd like to read it. And another thing she loves to do is hanging out with her father, who's a captain in the Riverview Fire Department. So your dad is a true American hero, Jessica. We're glad that you're following in his footsteps in public safety. A cool daughter hanging out with a cool dad. That's a wonderful thing. The quote that she liked was, "The only failure in life is the failure to try." And she was quoting another personal hero, her mom. And again, we should all quote our moms. They're very important people. But you know what? I think your mom kind of borrowed that from Elbert Hubbard, who said there's no failure except in no longer trying. Jessica, you're doing a great job for us on Midnights. We're glad you're with us. Keep up the good work. If you ever come to days, we'll see you in the sunlight. Folks, we're going to turn the corner spotlight off on Police Service Aide Jessica Meyer. We're going to talk about a little safety tip today. We've been kind of talking about this quite a bit lately, and it's because it's become very important, something that I'm getting a lot of calls on. We're receiving calls from people who are getting calls from those saying they work for the IRS, or they work for the Sheriff's Department, or they work for the West Bloomfield Police, and we want you to give us your personal information. Folks, nobody's going to do that. We're not going to ask for personal information. Think about it. The IRS already knows everything about you they need to know. And you may get an email from someone purporting to be from the IRS or the FBI or Google or Microsoft. And they may say, you know what, give us your personal information, we'll fix your computer. Again, it's a scam. Don't listen to them. You can go to the Attorney General's website, the top law enforcement official in the state of Michigan. He's got all sorts of tips that will help you. You connect with that website also on our Facebook page. And if you have any questions, please feel free to call me in the Crime Prevention Unit, and I'll be glad to help you out. So folks, don't go away. We will be right back with my very, very good-looking co-host, Dave McNeely, and our dear friend, Mark Stout. Don't go away.
You're watching West Bloomfield 911 on Civic Center TV, a service of the Greater West Bloomfield Cable Communications Commission. For more information or to watch episodes on demand, visit civiccentertv.com/WB911. Civic Center TV, television that's close to home.
The West Bloomfield Police Foundation raises money to help those who protect and serve the community. Whether it's emotional or financial support, the foundation provides a helping hand to officers, their families, and those in the community. For more information on the West Bloomfield Police Foundation, contact Kurt Lawson at 248-975-8900 or visit wbpolicefoundation.org.
Hello, folks. We are back with Dave, my co-host, and our very special guest, a dear friend, Mark Stout, Administrative Lieutenant with the West Bloomfield Police Department. Mark, glad to have you here.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
You know, we kind of, folks may have seen a PSA we did, a short program we did on gun responsibility, gun ownership, responsible gun ownership, and gun safety. But it's an important topic, especially today. So we want to do a whole show on that and kind of elaborate on some of the stuff we touched on that other program. Gun ownership is not just a privilege in the United States, it's considered a right. So let's talk about that a little bit, because we kind of have a unique perspective in our country regarding gun ownership.
We do. You're right, Rick. I mean, you know, the Second Amendment of the Constitution, the Heller case, the Supreme Court said that that's an individual right, right? That we all have a right to, you know, possess firearms. But like you and I have discussed, there's responsibility that comes with that, and we want to be responsible firearms owners. You know, we talked a little bit in that other program we did about Operation Child Safe and their basic concept of you own it and you respect it and you secure it.
Right.
So.
Well, let's talk a little, and people have to realize responsibility and freedom isn't just a gun ownership type of thing. We have limitations on all sorts of rights. For instance, we have the right to freedom of speech, but
you can't yell fire.
Can't yell fire in a movie theater. I can't call up the president and tell him that because I don't like his policies, I want to kill him. Those are all limitations, and actually correct limitations on freedoms that we enjoy.
Yeah.
So it's also important to realize there's freedoms on gun ownership. Let's talk a little bit about the responsibility of gun ownership. Well, first of all, let's speak about purchasing a gun and how you go about that, because you guys, we're going to talk about your CPL class and an advanced CPL class. Let's talk about those first, then we'll go into securing a gun in a home.
Well, you know what's interesting? I think you'll find this to be interesting, Rick. There's just the latest figures I saw. There's over 516,000 CPL holders in Michigan now, right? So we're over 500,000 folks. Yeah. And if you look at the population that's eligible in Michigan, we're talking about 7 million people, right? So if I do my math right, I'm a police officer, forgive me. If I do my math right, we're talking about 1 in 14 people of the age that could obtain a concealed pistol license in Michigan have done so. Yeah. So over 500,000. So that is huge. That's really the big thing that we've seen. And as you mentioned, we teach a CPL class at the West Bloomfield Police Department, and we'll be doing our 140th class this coming Sunday. Wow. So we've been doing this for a while now. And you know, our perspective is that we're the police, and we're here to help you, but we can't be your protectors 24 hours a day. Right. And we'd like people to be an active participant in their own rescue. Right. And that's really the reason why we think it's important that people have a right to possess a firearm and have one for self-defense and obtain a concealed pistol license. But we have to have that responsibility, and we have to follow the law.
Right. Well, and why don't you tell the folks a little bit, because in one day in the past it used to be called CCWs, now it's called CPLs. Explain what those are and why the difference.
Yeah, well, it's a concealed pistol license. That's what people that come and take our class, which is the NRA's Personal Protection in the Home course, they obtain a Michigan concealed pistol license. So if you carry a pistol concealed and you don't have a concealed pistol license, the violation is CCW, carrying a concealed weapon. So occasionally when people discuss that, they'll kind of confuse the terms. Right. They'll talk about, I have a CCW license. Well, you actually have a concealed pistol license. If you didn't have one and you were to carry a pistol concealed on or about the person, then you'd have the potential violation of carrying a concealed weapon.
Right.
Can you touch on that in relation to open carry?
Yeah, that comes up a lot in our classes. So if you read the Michigan Constitution, it's not quite like the national Constitution. It's actually much more broad. There's no other issue about the militia. It just talks about people having a right to possess a firearm for protection of themselves and the state.
Sure.
So the Michigan Constitution is very plain. So what we have, and Dave, you've seen this before in your career, and we've seen it, is you can actually open carry a firearm in Michigan if you're not in one of the prohibited or restricted zones. You can't brandish a firearm, but for example, when Jennifer Granholm was the Attorney General, there was a case that came out that said a gun in a holster in plain view is not carrying a concealed weapon. So someone without a concealed pistol license could open carry. And it's something that we see and run into in police work.
And now those restricted zones you mentioned, why don't you give the folks some of those, what they are? And also, those restricted zones for open carry are the same that apply for CPLs, correct?
Yeah, well, actually, so concealed pistol license holders, it's not quite the same. There are some differences. That's why it can be a little bit confusing for some folks if you're not familiar with the law. Concealed pistol license holders have areas that they're prohibited from carrying. Sports arenas, entertainment facilities with seating for more than 2,500 people, liquor serving establishments where liquor is the primary source of income, church, mosque, synagogue, temple, right? Without the presiding official providing you with authority. Yeah, schools, daycare centers, etc. But there are additional places, if you're not a concealed pistol license holder, that you can't open carry. For example, you cannot open carry without a concealed pistol license in a lending institution, banks and credit unions and places like that. Also, any place that's licensed by the Liquor Control Commission. So say you walked into 7-Eleven and they have a liquor license. You can't open carry at a 7-Eleven unless you were a concealed pistol license holder. So there's some additional restrictions, and we always encourage people that go through our classes, you want to stay up on the law. And when you obtain your concealed pistol license, they'll provide you with a disc now that covers the current Michigan statutes regarding
Mark, does
firearms
anything
ownership.
happen when you open carry when you get into a vehicle? This
Yeah,
a lot
absolutely.
changed.
I'm glad you brought that up. It's very interesting, Dave. Something we'd like to discuss with people is if you're open carrying and you don't have a concealed pistol license, as soon as you step into a vehicle, gun in a holster, you're actually carrying a concealed weapon. Because, for every crime in Michigan, there's a set of criminal jury instructions. And the criminal jury instructions for the violation of carrying a concealed pistol in a vehicle talk about you're in the vehicle, you know the weapon's there, you take part in carrying and keeping the pistol in the vehicle. So it doesn't really discuss about the gun having to be concealed by clothing. So you're right, Dave. As soon as you step into a vehicle, if you don't have a concealed pistol license and you're open carrying in a holster, you are now carrying a concealed pistol. We like to tell people we're uptight about guns in cars in Michigan law.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Now, if I want to be, I want to go to your CPL class, and what do I need? What do I do? And
well, you have to be 21 years of age to get a concealed pistol license. Although the training requirement, once you attend the training requirement or meet the training requirement, it doesn't expire. So we've had some folks come through when they're 20 years old, or hey, I haven't reached my 21st birthday, but I'd like to learn about firearm safety. So they can go ahead and come through the class, but you have to be 21 years old. You cannot be a convicted felon. There are certain misdemeanors that there are prohibitions for within a certain time frame, and we discuss all that quite great length in the class. And I'm always available if people ever want to call. I'm always glad to talk to them.
I pass out your number a
all
lot.
the time. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Mark, we just had some law changes, didn't we, with concealed weapon?
Yeah, I mean, we are having regular law. You have to stay up to date. But I always encourage people to come through our class. I say we do a legal portion, a legal section. It's about an hour, 15 minutes, hour and a half. And I tell people to come through our class, because our class is, what's interesting about our class is all encompassing. We provide lunch. You don't need to have a firearm. We provide everything at the class, the books, the materials, the range time, because we think it's important that people get the right information. Isn't it good that they learn it from the police and not from someone who just wants to hey, I want to make his buck, get as many people through my class as possible. We limit our class size to 10 folks. And like I said, I try to encourage folks, come back, go through the legal portion. If you've been through our class originally, you're welcome to come back anytime and sit through the legal portion, because like you mentioned, Dave, the law is constantly changing. We're seeing updates and changes on a regular basis.
Well, and one of the things I've always found that I liked, and of course my eldest daughter went through the class, and she had
a great student.
She was the number one
she
shot.
was our top shot. That's
so
right.
now I have to be nice to her.
That's right. That's right. She'll give you some tips.
Yeah, you're not kidding. But she absolutely loved it, and she said that you and Officer Scott Snyder, who's your partner in that, you guys do a great job. She thoroughly enjoyed it, and she loved the repartee that goes back and forth. And of course, being raised with a father that's a cop, she understood all that. She said, "Boy, Dad, if you didn't know cop humor, you'd think those guys didn't like each other."
We're the best of friends, but you gotta poke fun, right?
Yes, yes. And like I always tell people, if in our business, if they're not busting your chops, they don't like you.
They don't like you. That's right. Yeah.
But one thing you guys do that I think is fascinating too, and I don't think everybody that offers a class, and I think one thing people need to be kind of assured of or kind of know is that just because someone's offering a class, just like because you're buying a garment or anything else, doesn't mean they know what they're doing.
You want to look at credentials.
You want to look at credentials.
Absolutely.
And I've got to tell the folks, nobody's got better credentials than this guy here.
No.
Appreciate that.
He's forgotten more about guns than I'll ever know.
Yeah, he's one of the best.
Absolutely. But you guys also offer tips for people on, you assist them, especially let's say women, because they have smaller hands and such, you assist them on how to select a gun.
We do. You know, the course that the state mandates, this personal protection of the home course, it's a really good course. There's a lot of great information, safe storage, you know, the law surrounding firearms, buying and selling firearms. But like you said, there are some things that are really important for people, especially if you're going to actually carry a concealed pistol. So Scott and I include a couple additional things in the class that you don't see in other classes. We talk about selecting a gun for concealed carry, and we talk about methods of concealed carry. Because as wonderful as the class is, we thought it was humorous that it's personal protection in the home to obtain your concealed pistol license to carry in the public. Like there's some things that should be addressed. And we always tell people, you go through your basic class, don't let that be your last training experience. We offer an advanced class, if I'm okay
to
discuss that a little bit. We do an advanced class that is scenario based. So you gentlemen have both used the machine that we have at the police department called CAPS. And CAPS is an acronym for the Canadian Academy of Practical Shooting. And it's a live fire simulator. It's DVD based. So the student stands in front of a large screen, and they use their firearm and their ammunition, and scenarios play out on the screen, and you have to determine whether or not you would actually use a firearm, or if you could defuse the situation, whether it's appropriate to have a firearm. And it's really valuable because the students that come through that class tell us the biggest issue for me is the decision making. It's one thing to go down and practice at the range and shoot a piece of paper.
Target doesn't shoot back.
Doesn't shoot back, right. Right. Just making decisions on whether or not, is this appropriate? Should I even draw a firearm in this situation? And the nice thing about, from the police standpoint for us, is we can put people in a situation where you're on the street and maybe there's another police officer. And I always tell people that are concealed pistol license holders, we can't see your halo. You may be the good guy, but we don't know that.
I like that.
We can't see your halo.
Right.
So if we're dealing with a person as a police officer and I come across somebody, concealed pistol license holder, and they have a gun in their hand, they've got to be ready to, put that firearm down and obey the officer's directions immediately.
I can always tell when they've gone through the class with you and Scott on a traffic stop, because they're courteous and they immediately tell us what they're required to tell us, that they have a firearm on them. And then you'll have somebody that you'll turn your back and start to walk away towards your patrol car, and they say, "Oh, I have a gun. Excuse me." That's not a comforting feeling. I can
Especially
always
when I
tell when
can't
they haven't
see
gone
'em.
through your guys' class.
Yeah, it's important. It's important that people get good training, and the course was good. But as you know, Rick, Scott and I have been fortunate. The police department has sent us to, dozens and dozens of the best schools in the country. I've been to Gun Sight and Lethal Force Institute, and I've had a chance to train with some really outstanding folks. And we hope that we can bring that to the citizens of West Bloomfield, or people that sign up for our classes.
Yeah, and the folks don't think they can learn from you. Your sons have taken after Dad, and they're outstanding shots themselves.
Yeah. My oldest son, he's be going to University of Michigan. He's a senior this year, and he's a great kid and a good student. He gets really good grades, but he's a national champion shooter. Yep. He set a record down at Camp Perry, Ohio, at the Nationals with a carbine this year. So we're really proud of them, and they're good boys and involved in scouts and
they're very
and shooting and band, and Good
your boys are very, very good, very well mannered.
Very talented.
Talented, yeah. and I think that's because when they were babies, their first rattle was the shape of a gun. You know? Well, let's talk a little bit about, now we're learning, you've told us about carrying a gun, how to go about doing that, how to go about doing it safely. And if a person doesn't want to carry a gun out in public, because not only is it maybe a right, but it's a great responsibility, but they may just want protection at home. And you teach that as well, correct?
We do. Yeah, that's a big portion of it.
And when you do that, do you also talk to the folks about securing their gun in a home?
Absolutely.
Because that's also part of the responsibility of gun ownership.
It is. Storage of firearms is critical, right? We've got to store them safely. And you and I have discussed before in the past, there's really two types of storage. There's your basic storage, firearms that I keep at home that are, my son's competitive rifle, his small bore 22 rifle, target rifle. That's not a self-defense firearm. That's a firearm that has a sporting purpose. And so we keep that locked up in a big gun safe. But when we do that type of simple storage, the ammunition is separate from the gun. The gun's locked up in a large safe. You store the ammo separate. And those are not firearms you keep accessible for self-defense. So that's something you could put a trigger lock on. If you didn't have the wherewithal, you couldn't afford to have a large gun safe. And obviously, as a crime prevention officer, take all those additional safety steps. But when we have a gun that we keep at home for self-defense, we got to think about other things. And the big issue is it needs to be accessible. Because you can imagine, Rick, if you woke up in the middle of the night, your home is being burglarized, and you go to your safe room, your master bedroom. If you have to unlock one of those little small gun locks in the dark and try to locate the ammunition, David, that's going to be really challenging.
Right.
So that's where devices like this come in. This is just one example. This is a handgun safe that's designed to keep a firearm that's loaded for personal protection in the home, but keep it so it's not accessible to an unauthorized user.
Who makes that?
This one's made by Hornady Ammunition Manufacturer, and they're our duty ammunition. They produce that, Dave. And there's just a variety of them. I brought this one today because it's kind of unique. It's one of the newer ones on the market. This one has an electronic lock. Can I show that?
Sure, absolutely, please.
So it has an electronic lock. It's set to the factory code of 1234. Well, what's unique about this particular one that Hornady's produced is it has some other technology. It has RFID technology. So if you wear one of these bracelets, then they have 3 or 4 of these at different sizes that come with it. I can swipe that over and it'll open up.
It's like if you're in bed,
Yeah, absolutely.
you just rolled over and just put your arm out.
Right. And we always encourage people to have a firearm at home that is a personal protection firearm. You want the idea of like sleeping with a gun next to your nightstand. We all wake up groggy, right?
Yeah.
You want there to be some time delay, some things that you need to do, so you don't wake up and I'm half asleep and grab your firearm and
Now, Mark, you don't have any affiliation with this.
I don't. I have no affiliation with them. This is just one of the ones in the market. There are ones available now that have fingerprint technology. There are simple ones that just run a simplex lock mechanism. If you're afraid of batteries and electronics scare you, this one has a key override if something was to happen with the batteries. But to me, if you're going to have a firearm for self-defense in the home and you want to keep it accessible, this type of technology is really something that you need. It can be bolted. This can be attached to a...
Why don't you show that too?
It's got knockouts at the bottom, so if you want to bolt it down to some heavy table. I know that one of the officers I teach with, he's got a similar type setup, and he bolts it to a heavy bed frame. He said, hey, if you want to take it from a house, you got to take the whole king-size bed with you. Right, so he leaves that bolted down, and it's there when you need it, but the big issue is what? If you have people that come over and visit, or children in the house or something like that, because that's really critical, right? You've got to keep that stuff so it's not accessible to unauthorized users. It's a responsibility.
Well, you brought up a couple things that I want to touch on. You mentioned having a slight delay, because like you say, you wake up, we're groggy, and that also goes back to what you're saying about putting the key in and what have you, because you want that accessibility. But this also, and you talked about securing this, because as a crime prevention officer, a lot of times, whether it's a gun safe or a safe that people have to keep important papers in or jewelry, I'll say, well, you know what, have you ever thought about getting a safe for your house, especially if they've already lost some things? Well, I did have a safe. Okay, why didn't you put stuff in it? Well, I did, but they took the safe.
They took the safe, absolutely.
So it's important if you've got one like this that can be picked up,
You got to
secure
attach it. Yeah.
If it's a big safe that weighs several hundred pounds, chances are they're not going to be taking that out of the house.
That's challenging. And we, in our career in police work, how many times have you seen safes that were stolen from homes?
Yeah.
It happens on a regular basis,
Right.
And that's not uncommon.
And we talked about being groggy. There, and Dave does too. I mean, there are cases, we're replete with cases where people have accidentally have a gun in the house for self-protection and shot the wrong target, whether it be a loved one. When I do the gun safety class and team, I talk about a father that killed his daughter. How do you live with that for the rest of your life?
Yeah, like what a difficult situation.
Yeah.
We tell people, besides the firearm, there's some other things you have to have. You have to have a flashlight, right? If you lose power, you have to have a flashlight. Today, our duty pistols, we have weapon-mounted lights that are attached. Every police officer in West Bloomfield has a weapon-mounted light on his duty pistol. If he's in uniform, he has that available to him. Because what? We have to positively identify a target. That's one of the most critical things. You've got to know ahead of time. And also, we encourage folks, if you can give somebody an opportunity to leave, if someone comes into my house, if I can be in my safe room and tell them I have a gun, I've called the police, leave, that's great.
Yes.
We'd much rather do that. No one wants to be involved in a shooting. No one wants to do that.
To take another man's or another one's life.
I have a fire extinguisher at my house, but I don't want to fire.
That's right.
I've got airbags and safety belts. I don't want to be in an accident. It's the same thing with a firearm. It's a tool of last resort.
Right.
It's a thing that you don't want to have to use.
Right.
So besides a flashlight, you should think about having a phone, right? If there's some issue with your phone lines, we tell folks that even if you have a functioning cell phone, you can call 911 even if you don't have a service plan on that. It's still going to work. So a cell phone, a flashlight, have a plan where you can get all the folks in your house to a safe room. That's part of our personal protection.
Just like having a fire plan for the house.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and you bring up a very interesting point. Just because you have a gun, and it's a wonderful tool if you need it, it doesn't necessarily have to be fired to have its effect. And my father, years ago, may he rest in peace, had a business in Detroit parking lot, and I remember one day he had a CCW permit in those days.
Yes, the old days.
Yeah, and some man threatened my father and was going to slice him, and all my father had to do was show that he had the gun, and the threat was over.
Absolutely.
So thank God he didn't have to harm anyone, didn't have to kill anyone, but he may have gotten seriously hurt or killed if he didn't have access to a gun.
Yeah, we know that there are thousands and thousands on an annual basis of situations where people just being able to present a firearm can diffuse a situation, right? Or having that firearm available to them is what prevented them from becoming victims of crimes.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just like you my father was a police officer,
yes.
and I can remember as a young boy riding with him, and we lived in a rural area in Springfield Township, and some less than ideal characters in a truck ran us off the road, and my father had his off-duty pistol, and they got out and grabbed a tire iron from the back of the truck, and my dad presented his police officer, and they wanted to leave at that point. My dad went down the road before the time of cell phones, called Central Dispatch and gave the plate number, and that prevented what could have been an unfortunate situation.
Right.
Who knew what those people intended to do? I don't think the guys with the tire iron were there to deliver Girl Scout cookies.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Do you want the ones with coconut or not? Now you've got another item there which I thought was interesting. Let the folks see it. That'll help open that up.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you had like a wallet, you could put this RFID card in here also. This will work too. So I can activate it and swipe that over, and you can gain access to it. It's just technology is progressing on a daily basis.
Right.
The biometric ones, I'm always a little hesitant with the fingerprint technology. I thought, geez, what if my hands were sweaty, or what if they were dirty, or God forbid, you had blood on it.
Right.
So I tend to be a simple person. I like things, but this RFID technology,
kind of like keep it
simple.
Yeah,
KISS, it's the KISS principle.
Well, that doesn't run. Is that on battery right now?
This will plug in to 110. This particular one will plug in on 110, but it also has batteries. So say you took it to a hotel room, Dave. Say you and your wife are on vacation, you're going somewhere, and you want to bring your firearm with you to have protection from your family. This is something you can have. And we have a variety of them. There are ones that are made specifically now for vehicles, right? Because with all the CPL holders, and we've talked about these pistol-free zones, so say someone shows up at your church, Rick, well, they probably don't have permission to carry. And they're a concealed pistol license holder. Maybe they're going to go do some other things when they get done. They want to be able to secure that in their vehicle safely, because I don't want it stolen out of my vehicle.
Right.
The last thing I want is a firearm that I own to be used in a crime. It'd be a horrible thing. And we discussed that in our,
Well, let's discuss that now. If I'm a bad guy and I break into a house, what am I looking for, Mark?
guns,
And
jewelry,
yeah.
narcotics.
Money.
Right? It's one of those rare things, and we've talked about this, that has more value on the black market, or at
Yes.
least the equivalent on the black market of what it has, on your retail value.
Right. If I steal your jewelry or something of value, I'm probably going to get pennies on the dollar.
Pennies on the dollar.
But if I steal a gun,
Oh yeah, that may have a lot more value.
Have a lot more
yeah, we have
value.
to be aware of that.
Yeah.
I mean,
and it's not just that we don't want that gun committed in a crime to hurt innocent people. We don't want that. But we can also be affected by that as well. I know you're familiar with an incident.
Yeah.
Maybe you'd like to talk about that occurred a few years ago.
yeah, we talked about there was an officer that was killed in a nearby department. That was they were surveilling some folks that were breaking into homes, and the officer came out and he got into an altercation with one of the bad guys, one of the burglars, and unfortunately there was a shooting and the officer was killed with the homeowner's firearm.
Yeah.
So in no way are we blaming the homeowner for
No.
that. It's just important, and I always tell people, we discuss safe storage of firearms at home, and it is important to realize if you say you live alone and you're the only one in the house. All right, I can understand where you might say, I really don't need a safe, but my concern is always this: what if you came home? Wouldn't you hate to face one of your own guns?
Or they break in and take it.
Yeah, take it, right. Do I have to come into my house and find out, even though I live alone, I didn't have to worry about safe storage? If it's secured, then I come into my house and there was a burglary, then I'm not worried about them having access to my firearm and maybe using it against me.
Right, absolutely. Mark, let's talk a little bit, if you don't mind. Also, one of the things that I think is important when we're talking about responsible gun ownership is also the parenting that goes involved with that. And as a father, you're a father, I am as well, and we're all police officers, so our kids were raised around that. Let's talk a little bit about responsible gun ownership as
Sure.
far as
I'd love to do that.
parenting goes.
The NRA has the Eddie the Eagle Safety Program, and this is for youngsters that are just too young. We talk about my boys. My boys are older. They've shot, like I say, through scouts, and then into collegiate competition and things like that. But at the really young age, the principle is you want to teach kids, stop. If you come across a firearm, whether you're at your stop. That's the first thing. Just don't do anything. Stop. Don't touch. Leave the area or run away and go tell an adult.
Right.
And that's really the thing that we want to teach. And I would bet it's interesting because we both had people who grew up. I know, Dave, your father was a police officer your entire life. When I was young, my father would unload his firearm, and if I wanted to see it, he would let me handle it.
Mark, I was going to say that's what I do with
Yes.
mine. I believe that parents should take the mystery out of
Yes,
it.
they
Yeah.
should.
Because it's a mystery, and they see their
When you were a
dads
kid,
or moms putting their guns
There
away.
was nothing in your house. There was nothing hidden. You knew where everything
Yeah.
was.
That's right.
And we all did, and that's the truth.
Yeah.
So I agree with you, Dave. If you could take that mystery away, if you can, the kid will lose interest. Your
Sure.
children will lose interest after 3 or 4 minutes of handling that.
Right.
And that was one of the things that my father ingrained to me. If you want to see one of my firearms, let me know.
My dad did too.
Yeah.
My dad did the
Yeah.
same
Even though
thing.
my dad wasn't a police officer,
Right.
he always owned a business,
And
so
had a
he always
firearm.
had firearms.
Absolutely. Yeah. For protection.
And of course, we live in a different world today too. My grandfather, my maternal grandfather, may he rest in peace, was a police officer in Lebanon, and my mother remembers growing up over there. And of course, he would just come home, and he didn't come home every night. Over there, they used to do it where they were like firefighters. They stayed at the station, but he'd come home, one day a week. And she said he'd kind of take his gun and toss it on the table. But it was a different world. We're talking in the 30s and 40s, different
Absolutely.
world, different family dynamics. She said we knew better than to touch anything Dad brought home. But that's not so much the case anymore.
No, that's true.
You know.
And that's my issue too with my kids. I wanted them to know at an early age, if you go to some other child's house and someone says, "Hey, my dad's got a gun, you want to get it out and play?" My kids knew right away that was time to leave.
Right.
Like, you're not going to be in that environment.
Right.
And that's why it's important to do that. And then once a youngster progresses to the point where you think they're mature enough and say, and we know when it varies from kid to
Yes.
kid. That's when we introduce children to shooting. We started out with air rifles and air pistols. That's how I started my kids shooting with air guns. And then we moved on to, organized shooting with 22s. And, now eventually my son's shooting center fire rifles, in his teens, competitively.
Yeah.
My kid shoots with I'm the president of the Michigan Police Combat Pistol Association. And we have members that are both civilians and law enforcement, and the goal is to teach people, safe firearms training. And we do a competition called PPC. And my youngster, 17 years old, he shoots. He's one of the top 20 PPC shooters in the state,
right.
shooting alongside police officers.
Right.
And for him, it's a tool, and it's something that Dad does, and something that we can do together. And my children hunt, and they recognize that. I've talked about this. Self-defense is that basic human right?
Mm-hmm.
And we believe, I think everybody sitting at this table, we believe that people should have a right to possess firearms to protect themselves. Right. And I always tell people, there's a concealed pistol license holder here in West Bloomfield that several years back, actually 10 years ago, about a mile south of here, he had a concealed pistol license. He owned a bar in Detroit. He came home, and I usually tell people in class, a couple misguided Utes, like Joe Pesci said, confronted him at gunpoint, right? And he made the decision at that point, and he said, hey, I wasn't fighting over the bank deposits. We interviewed him later. That's not what this was about. What it was about, I was afraid that if I gave in to the criminal, if I acquiesced, would they take me inside? Would they kill my family? Right. So he made the decision that he was going to fight right there. And as a concealed pistol license holder, he struggled with one of the bad guys, and they actually blocked. The bad guy had a shotgun, and they fired a round up into the ceiling in his garage, and he shot the criminal, and they fled the area. And if you remember this case, Rick,
I do.
We were called down to the location, and this guy's very upset, and we took him to the hospital. We took him to Providence Hospital. And while we were there, having treatment for him, a misguided Ute showed up
yes,
with a single gunshot wound.
Yeah.
And it was just by chance we caught the bad guy.
Yes.
And I was an investigation sergeant at the time in Detective Bureau. Got the bad guy, and got this gentleman that was a victim treated, and those, and we were able to catch up with his partner, and he was convicted. But there's an example of a concealed pistol license holder here in West Bloomfield. They used his firearm, and the gentleman he shot survived and went out and was tried and put away to prison.
Mark, we're just about out of time. Is there something you'd like to tell the folks about gun ownership and responsibility?
Yeah,
and
I don't know if we mentioned it or not, but we do believe people have a right to self-defense, and but along with that right comes responsibility.
Yes.
So if you own it, you respect it, and you secure it.
Right. And
that's what I like to stress to people.
Mark, give a phone number where people can get a hold of you if they would like to take the CPL class or the advanced CPL class, or just ask you about gun ownership and responsibilities.
Sure, we'd love to speak to you. The West Bloomfield Police Department, 248-975-9200. You can call that number and ask for Lieutenant Mark Stout, and I'd be glad to speak with you. And we get questions all the time about where can I take a class, what do you offer, and what's available to me. And would love to talk to the public about that.
Excellent. Mark, that's good information. Remember, folks, that if you're going to exercise your rights, whatever they may be, we also have to exercise responsibility. If we don't, we may not have those rights, so keep that in mind. Folks, we'd like you to look on your screen and take a look at an American hero who was killed in the line of duty. Please remember in your thoughts and in your prayers Special Agent Louis M. Bonacasa of the United States Air Force Office of Special Investigations. Special Agent Bonacasa was killed in the line of duty on December 21st, 2015, along with 5 of his colleagues. And they were conducting a investigation, joint project with 2 airmen. Those 2 airmen were also wounded. But they were conducting an investigation in a village near Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan. As they were conducting this investigation and while they were on patrol, a suicide bomber drove a motorcycle into them and detonated the explosives. And again, 6 special agents of that unit were killed in the line of duty. Special Agent Bonacasa was promoted posthumously to the rank of Special Agent in the United States Air Force Office of Special Investigations. So remember all of these great American heroes, but today in particular, this fine young man, Special Agent Louis M. Bonacasa. Remember him in your thoughts and your prayers, and we say, brother, rest in peace. Your memory will never be forgotten. David, would you like to say anything before we go?
Sure, folks, if you see something, say something.
Give us that, secure it again, that nice little 3.
Own it, respect it, secure it.
And for the kids, stop, don't touch, leave the area, tell an adult. And folks, also, you can get those locks. If you can't afford something like this, you can come into the police department. We'll give you a lock to secure your gun. Folks, We want you to keep in touch with the West Bloomfield Police Department, and you can certainly do that. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. You can also sign up for Nixle and Crime Mapping to find out crime trends going on in your township, and also we can give you up-to-date, real-time information that may be pertinent to you. So as you keep touch with us at the police department, also keep in touch with us here at West Bloomfield 911. Don't forget to watch us on Civic Center TV or on demand at civiccentertv.com. Remember, folks, take care of each other, be safe, and love one another. Tomorrow is promised to no one. I'm Officer Rick, and we'll see you again on West Bloomfield 911.